I'm talking with Pam and Allison of the Rogers Park Garden Group, and we're going over the short but so full history of this group. In addition to supporting the Circle Gardens at Morris, you then had the first winter of existence, to recruit ideas for the next garden, right?
Right,
For the next one that you would
right.
work on as a group.
We after learning what we learned from Loyola then,
Right.
we put together a whole kind of an RFP that people would have to fill out and tell us who's going to be involved, because we really knew that we didn't have the capacity not only just to build the garden, but maintain it afterwards. So it had to be a group of people who were interested enough in raising money for it on their own.
Right.
All the money that we raise for the year goes to the next year's community garden.
Uh-huh.
So for the Loyola garden, we were so new, we'd only raised $400. I mean,
On
that
the spot.
garden, that garden started. We started the whole garden group in April. That garden went in June.
Right. I remember
So-
it was Artists of the Wall weekend that,
Yeah.
that you
So
were
we only had a
planting.
couple months.
Amazing.
But then all the money we raised after that was going to go to the next community garden. So we knew we needed to really sort of get our act together.
Right.
And then we had this great group of people who wanted to do the garden at the metro station.
Which
Some-
is at Greenleaf and the Metro Tracks, Greenleaf and Ravenswood right here.
Yeah, as an entrance to Rogers Park. I mean, that's where people get on and off the train, and it should look nice. And at some point it did. There were some great plant material
That's
there.
right.
But nobody had cared for it any longer. It all sort of went to pot. And we had a huge number of people. They showed up. We have master gardeners who are a part of our group who are able to help people put their ideas onto paper, into a design, and help them organize themselves so they know we need these days to clear it out. This is what's going to happen on the planting days, and here's what's needed for maintenance.
And it's a stunner. It's a total stunner with the flagstone and all that.
Well, then Pam.
Then my next door neighbor, who is a mosaic tile artist and does beautiful work, her work can
Is
be
that
seen
how
at
that
Taste. She watched what we were doing, and she really couldn't donate time or money, and she didn't feel that she was an adept enough gardener to really participate, but she just loved what we were doing. And one day her head popped over the fence and she said, "What if I made a sign, a mosaic tile sign for the garden?" And I said, "Really?" That would be marvelous.
Wonderful. Yes.
And so she then spent the winter working on the sign, and it went up in May, at the end of May, beginning of June, and it is
It's a
stunning.
stunner. Yeah, it's incredible.
It shows that there is just such love and such talent in this community for the spaces.
Right.
And for her to give the community that
Such a gift.
was so generous.
Yeah. So, Allison just referred to, with what you learned the first year, you knew to put out a number of get this information before we go anywhere type processes for the second year. So now we're in the third year, and I know that what wound up winning. Well, explain what wound up getting chosen this year.
Yeah, we had one major submission, which was Morse Avenue, and it was basically between Lakewood and Bosworth area, not Bosworth.
Not Bosworth.
Just a little, the tracks.
Lakewood and Wayne?
The tracks.
Wayne, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the idea was to do the parkways along there, and it's the Lakewood Block Club, basically.
Okay.
That was the sponsoring neighbors who would, do the bulk of the fundraising and caretake the space.
And it was going to tie into the streetscaping.
Right.
Right.
To extend what was
Right.
going to happen along Morse
Right.
Avenue.
So,
Well-
so the project had to be on a bit of hold until the streetscaping schedule was determined.
Like so many things that Morse
Yes.
Avenue streetscaping has
Poor-
put on hold.
Poor Morse Avenue. So anyway, the thinking was that the garden wouldn't go in until the fall, because the streetscaping would take place this summer, but apparently that schedule has now been tossed up in the air and no one knows what's happening. So we will see what happens with next year. There's a group of neighbors there that really would love to get going, but they're so concerned about investing a lot of time and money into, landscaping.
Something that might get dug up.
Or just get destroyed because of construction equipment.
Right.
So we think it's, wise to put it on hold. So instead, this year, we also developed another program that Allison should speak to, which is Adopt the Public Way.
Yes.
Where we were able to issue significant number of grants and dollars to get people landscaping public spaces.
Now, let's just for our listeners, the public way for us consists of everything east of or on the other side of the sidewalk, right?
It will definitely, but it could be on the other side as well, depending on, because we wanted to leave our options open. There's not that much public space in Rogers Park.
Amazingly.
That you could garden on. And so what we wanted to do was say, we're open. If you have a spot that the public sees, that the public
walks by,
interacts with in some way, but it happens to be on private property, we don't want to shut the door to that.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept that public way as kind of a nebulous way of saying it, so that we can be open to any kind of suggestion that comes along.
Mm-hmm.
But we going back to say how this all started with this grant program that we're doing. When we did the Metro Garden, one of the things that we talked about was we had raised about $1,800 for community gardens, and we were wondering, should we give all that money to the Metro Garden, or how should we handle that? And one of the things that we're concerned about is this capacity building for the group that has to continue gardening in that spot.
Right.
So we want to encourage them and help them to figure out how to do fundraising for themselves. So what we decided was that for the community gardens, we would allocate $1,000, and then depending on what the size of the project was, because that's the other thing. I mean, if somebody came to us and said, we want to garden this huge project, and we want all your money for it, well, no.
Not.
So we'll give you this amount of money, and then if you want to do a really big project, you can do it in phases. You can raise the rest of the money yourself. You can come back to us if you do it in phases for help later.
Right.
But we thought that was really going to be the best use of the money that we were raising from Rogers Park people.
Residents.
The residents here, the businesses here, and what would they like to see? Their money, and we had a little committee.
Well, that's just smart.
Yeah.
That's just...
Well, we had a little committee that talked about this, too. We try to get as many voices involved as possible for making these kinds of decisions. So that first year we had about $800, so we did a little grants program.
Right.
And then we said you could get up to $250 from us.
That's perfect.
To do gardening. And it could just be an individual. There were far fewer requirements than if you were doing the big one for the $1,000. So that year, Peter Fugiel wanted to participate in restoring the garden boxes along Devon. Edgewater was doing their side of the street.
Yeah.
But now we had Rogers Park. And so he got some money, and he turns out to be an absolutely wonderful gardener.
Maniac gardener.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep.
And he's a great organizer. They all say if they didn't have him involved in it, they would not have gotten as far as they did. And those boxes looked fantastic.